Welcome to episode 18 of The Heart of the Shaman. I'm Pavan and I'm here with Liz McNulty today. And we are going to just dive into some of the themes that are current and share some of our experience as it relates to shamanism in a modern context. Liz, welcome.
Thank you, Pavan. I'm just so happy to be with you. I really appreciated you asking and have benefited
Likewise.
so much when we've been on each other's tables. It's just such a gift to know you.
So, something that I really loved about your work, and it feels like now that you mentioned that, I just kind of want to dive right into this a little bit. So, we'll talk more about it. Liz is a Tensegrity medicine practitioner, which, as I understand it, it is a form of energy work, but I feel like there is a lot more to it, and it is connected to the other layers of our being as well. So, you can certainly speak more to that. But I did want to say that, yes, when I was on your table and received some work from you, that really what I appreciated, I would say the most was this like held space of neutrality. And so that may be something that is, I don't know, like a part of the curriculum but I feel like there also is an innate gift people have. I think, like with many things, we can all get to that space to really just not go there and hold it. So I felt that as soon as the session started. And I
Oh,
think that because of that, and as a result, it was sort of able to just dive into right away what was meant to happen in that moment. And so, as most of you know, I am also a practitioner in energy medicine and shamanism from a modern perspective, and we've done some work together as well. So
oh,
that
good.
that was part of also asking you on. I'm curious about learning more about your journey as it relates to that. And for some reason, particularly maybe more recently in the past few years, because my sense is there's been some really like, I don't know, fast forward motion and where you've gone and where it's taken you. So, yeah, if you'd like to start with sharing some of that, I'm excited
Yeah.
to learn more.
Yeah. It really had my work and just my whole system it feels like a fast forward in the last, I don't know, 4.5 years. And yeah, so as it relates to this tensegrity medicine practice, so that word tensegrity, it means tension integrity. And you could say tension integrity means the same thing as that 0 point energy, right? That place of coherence where there is no push or pull. And so the practice is balancing the energy to we're finding the polarizing tension patterns and then bringing it into that coherence, that tension integrity, that 0 point energy point. And it's in reflection to the highest vibration in each one of us, that coherent field that we each have. So that's kind of like what's in the forefront is okay, bring out that space in them, and then it's whatever's interfering, right? Whatever energy is interfering in our system as it's expanding and contracting, for those spaces to feel the resonant coherence to the person's energetic core, that coherent higher self place. So, yeah, it started really as like a dive into fascia because traditionally this tensegrity medicine was an integrative approach for manual and movement therapists. And
Mhm.
it was like, oh, can we balance this fascial tension matrix into tension integrity for the alignment of joints? And then creator of it, she really realized, Kelly Clancy, working with chronic pain patients, it's like, oh, there's so much going on in the system. And it's about balancing all the different states, whether it's a belief system or an emotion that's suppressed or a nervous system state that's stuck. And so, what's in the forces of the push pull, it's all energy. And so it's just kind of finding that space that's where it's sticky and interference, and then presencing there and then allowing it to come into resonance, if that kind of makes sense
So
about
a couple
tensegrity.
of things, yeah, were coming up related to that that I think are kind of exciting. One is it feels in this day and age very important for people to have modalities that they can connect with that are each either connecting with all layers of the being or
Yes,
possibly approaching a layer that is not just the mind. So by
yes,
no means is it to say there isn't a space for that, but oftentimes it feels like, oh, maybe therapy. And I know this is different than, what you were talking about in terms of addressing the physical body, but
right,
having an understanding of the fuller scope, what's coming to me is that's kind of the go-to
right.
oftentimes in Western medicine when a lot of things are off, or just there's a whole certain arena where it's like, okay, maybe talk to someone. And again, like there's certainly a place for that, but our culture and our society is a society of the mind. So even I'm sure so much of what you're addressing in sessions with people, possibly in that the energy that comes up, that's interference,
Yes,
there's probably a lot that comes up in the space of the mind. And then, in terms of like wanting to balance that, but like the balance, right, is not always more of the same. So this is just,
yes,
again, one piece of things, but it's very relevant in our times, currently where, okay,
yes,
if I've got a lot of energy in the mind, and of course we have a lot of information through social media, and there's all these different layers of why the dial has like been turned up on that a little bit. And so, then it's like, to put more sort of focus or energy in the mind may not always be the thing.
right.
Again, talking about things, this really is just based on our culture. It's like, yeah, we've already pretty much got that covered ad nauseum. I mean, I'm just going to say it the way
Right.
it's
But
coming
if
to
it just
me.
stays up there,
Yeah, we're like these balloon heads.
right, it's not then integrated into
Yes.
the multidimensionality of our system.
And there's so many people, of course, that have gotten that and continue to get value from therapy, but or talk therapy, but the idea that that can be coupled with other modalities, or there can be a bit of a broader approach so that this integration can happen and this balance. I'm just kind of saying it from like, I don't know, like a Western cultural context of like all the energy up here. Then oftentimes I'll say to people, like, it's great if we don't need to know the story behind something or the narrative or whatever. Good. If the energy releases from the system and you come back
Right.
to a point of balance, amazing.
Yeah,
Like that's, if we need to know, we will know.
right.
So, you know,
There's
kind of
so many ways.
balance, what it feels like is a balance is coming into the way that we approach wellness.
Mm,
This is a really important piece of that. And then that 0 point, I was feeling like, oh, yeah, I was so grateful when I came into an environment and a space and your energy field where there was this, I said space of neutrality, but that 0 point is really, it's like the same thing.
exactly.
And then when you were speaking about, and also we're creating that within the person, which of course, balance, we want balance, but to understand it that way, that like this neutral space is like the ideal state, I think can be very illuminating because we're so like, again, bombarded with stuff and can often be filled with things or energy that is not necessarily ours or beneficial. And so, I don't know, I'm just gonna take it in this direction. You can tell me if
Yes.
this makes sense
Yeah.
with your modality or resonates, but it's like, if the energy can come through and we're more like a vessel, or like what I'm seeing in my inner vision is like a wind chime, or
Uh-huh.
a river or something where it's just like it moves through you and you
Yes.
can have the experience of the thing, or you can connect with the energy, but it's not stuck. Or you mentioned that stickiness, which, yeah, also can be tension and show up in a variety of different ways.
Right.
Then it's like, um, there's something that can be, I think, again, from sort of like a cultural standpoint, a little bit scary about that, because like this is taking it into a different area or arena as well. But like, there's this who am I aspect. Like, if I'm going to be a vessel, or if I'm going to, like, does that mean I'm
Yeah.
empty? Or,
Right.
if I come to this point of balance, which just means there's like nothing there. And it's like, not really.
If I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my body, and I'm not my feelings. We think we are our personalities, but to
Yes.
me, those are just like parts. Those are like parts. I gained a lot of information from the internal family systems framework. So to me, those are just parts that are helping the moment, but it's not who you are, right? We're the fundamental consciousness that is in the witnessing space of these things. And that, when you kind of that's a place that can make a lot of space and safety for the parts or the tension patterns that are like pushing and pulling on us. But yeah, it can, yeah, I think for a lot of people, they think they are their personality. And I thought I was that like
Sure.
6, 7
Yeah.
years ago, I'd have been like, yep, that exacerbated busy mom. Yep. But no, that's a part, that's an energy, like, that's helping me get through overwhelming moments. But to have that spaciousness of witness from a very neutral, like you said, a very neutral space, it's a spectrum of frequency. I think of us as like a spectrum of frequency. I love that you just said wind chime,
Yes.
you know? And it's like everything is like the emotional state when you see that wheel of emotions, like all of that is frequency that we're here to just allow the wave to come through us, right? And or the thinking thoughts, from a spectrum of the universe is working for me to I don't trust anyone, right? And how we relate in between. So it's just kind of like are the sometimes are these frequencies in a dissonance and or they're inhibited and not even singing or and and can this coherent neutral place, so many traditions, right? Like Chinese medicine calls it the Daji pole, yogic calls it the Shushumna, IFS calls it the
Yes.
higher self, like this space that is ising with awake aliveness, that consciousness space. When that starts to, I feel like sometimes I picture two mirrors or two, you could even think of two wind chimes, like, just reflecting to each other and the dissonant space and the coherent space. And all it needs is presence. And there's something in that alchemy of just that unconditional presence that then the resonance of the dissonant frequency, whether that's in the physical tissues or the emotional body or the nervous system state or the cognitive state. It can just, and then the more and more integrated we are and kind of grounded, feeling connected above and below. And have called in my dissonance and have that integration and coherence, the more I'm a coherent field, right? Mirroring to others. And then the light beam is like, "Oh, yeah, you remember?
Mhm.
We're light. We're coherent light. We're not our personalities.
Yes.
We're not our belief on this thing. We're not our talking points."
Well,
Uh,
and what I love about that is, like, it's very simple. And
yeah,
we tend to overcomplicate things, and, I absolutely recognize that some people are more pragmatic or technical or science-based, and then others are a little bit more abstract in their thinking, but that doesn't come into play too much here because we really can pare it down to be so simple.
yeah,
And even when you're talking, like you mentioned briefly, the internal family systems and the parts and how the personality is a part, I feel like there's different sort of, and with frequency or vibration, for example, it's like there's different spaces we can go with our own awareness. So, if it feels, for example, scary to be like, oh, my personality is not who I am or something, it's like, okay, but it's a part of you, it's a part. So we're
yeah.
not discounting it or undervaluing it or saying it's not,
No,
at the
you're
forefront.
befriending it. You're kind of just, I mean, that model is so compassionate. It's like you're befriending it and getting to know why it does it the way it does. And maybe it's in dissonance because there's like a burden on it that just doesn't apply anymore to this timeline, you know? And
Mhm.
so that's kind of the work of like the more that you meet yourself under the skin with that dissonant energy, there's so much information there. And that's kind of how it relates to the shaman work is like you can meet, the more you're presencing there, you can get information. Sometimes it's an inner child, sometimes it's from a different timeline, sometimes it's a lineage and it's there because it's up for your conscious witnessing to
Mhm.
then, oh, I'm not getting rid of anything. Again, you're not, no energy can be created nor destroyed, but like you can transmute and change the resonance. And so how it was relating in your system is now exhausted and unburdened, but you're bringing in its traits. You know what I'm saying? Like you can differentiate the resonance so then it's more in sync with the bigger vibration in you.
Yeah, and it feels like, for example, with the identifying with personality, it's kind of like we dismantle some things. So at first, you're getting comfortable with this witnessing space, but you can go beyond that where you're really recognizing this is not who I am.
Hmm.
And all of these examples, like when you mentioned the shamanism, and it's like, okay, yeah, we might go into a lineage or a past life or something else. And it's sort of like it's all not who you are, but it's
Yeah.
all also who you are in the sense that the
Mhm.
consciousness and the witness is universal.
Uh,
So in
yeah.
the human experience, we have a little bit of maybe an attachment, right? To like, who am
Yeah.
I? What's mine? Like all of that. And the
Yeah.
further you go with this, right, is this sort of like continuous stream of amazing information and healing and expansion.
Yes.
And there's some personal connection to it, but it comes from I'm going to say personal space that is not connected to ego or personality or any of this. I mean,
Yeah.
from a shamanic perspective, I would say it's your soul, but I like the way that you put it because that can have religious connotations for people. So you don't have to necessarily use that term or, that word. But, we're sort of getting to the core of who we are. And we have a very universal nature, but we're living in a world where like, separation and contrast is the
Right.
thing. So
Right.
that is what can make all of this a little bit tricky. I don't know if tricky is the right word, but it's like what makes it the journey.
That's right. That's right. It's like, again, like, you know, the interference of thinking we're all different and the illusion of separation, right?
Yes.
Is the greatest interference that we are that
Yes.
different from each other, And it's like, gosh, I just so, as it relates to the collective, I'm like, I feel like at the core, we all want safety and connection, right? And it's just different ways of going about it. But like, I don't know, just reminding each other who we are, that love light. I mean, I know that sounds so, but it's that space is so light filled and radiates just benevolence, right? And so I don't know, it's just kind of like if we all light up in that space, this is my wish, right, for the world is like we just all find that space within ourselves and then you're just living in it. And then that is a mirror. You're mirroring. And then if people are reminded, I have that space too. Like, I don't know. And so it's like, I feel like it's like a bunch of light nodes can then light and create a more coherent society or culture. I don't know. I mean, but everything is a mirror. Like, I'm so sometimes I wanna just be like, "Thank you, administration, for triggering this crap out of us," because, all that trigger of power over people and power over land, if I go into that energy of where I'm triggered, I get to meet a timeline or a space where, I it was really, the power over the powerlessness. And if I can find then the witness and the coherence, not only am I bringing integration to this present day time space, but I feel like, again, as this relates to shamanism, like the ripples are happening as I'm relating to the particles of me that I'm also seeing in that timeline, and bringing that unconditional love and acceptance and like coherent to that trauma event or whatever that is then rippling in that timeline,
Yes.
and like it's just all kind of happening at the same time. But yeah, this is really, if you really want to get into it, I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm in this time
Yes.
space and this trigger is here and the power over dynamics is up again. And I get to presence with it and integrate it in my own system. And then what does that do in the ripple in all timelines?
So it's interesting that this is what's coming through, but there's a lot that's coming through around, oneness, universal connection, or
Yeah.
I guess you could say the collective consciousness that I mean, it's like we're everyone. So I'm like,
Yeah.
how far do I want to go with this? But the piece that is coming forward is the safety, the healing connection. Yes, that's very connected to shamanism and a shamanic way of life, which goes back to the beginning of time, really. And one of the ways that sometimes I'll share that with people is like these four categories of self, other, nature, and the spirit realm. Other
Yeah.
people. Nature includes animals and flora and fauna, and the spirit realm includes like ancestors and, like that's a whole sort of arena of who is there, I
Yeah.
guess you could
Yeah. Yeah.
say. The practices are about this connection with all of it. And again, sort of like from cultural context, there's certain areas where we're generally more connected or taught to be more connected, and then others not so much. And of course, people have different experiences depending on their upbringing, etc. But like nature and the spirit realm are usually the two where it's like, okay, we could maybe hone in here a little bit more. Um,
Yeah.
and particularly with spirit and the ancestors. And so that lineage piece. And I guess I'm going to use this as an example, and hopefully it'll get a little bit more concise, because one of sort of, I don't know if I would say it's a mantra, but one of the things that came through to me from my guides for this year is to get more serious about not being so serious.
I loved when you said that. I needed to hear that so badly.
Yeah. And it feels like, so appropriate because, again, even with, say you're going into a healing, for example, and there's a shamanic journey involved, and you touch the space of an ancestor or a past life, or even sometimes it's not totally clear if this was a lived experience by
Yeah.
you or just in the collective and you're tapping into it. And
Right.
again, there's this aspect of it doesn't really matter so much. So some of the things that we connect to where, again, it's like, wait, what's my identity? Who is me? It even gets into
Yeah.
that sphere of like,
Right.
who was I in that life?
Right.
What is, and it kind of can go on and on. And it's like, oh, what if we're in this more playful space that's actually the space that's, I'm just going to say, true and real, where
Mhm.
there is this connection and sort of truth in the connection, I guess, wherever you take it. So it's like, yeah, if one past life was lived by you and then one feels like it wasn't lived by you, what does that even really mean? It's all connected. So it's
Right.
not that relevant. So I feel like in my explaining it, I'm like, am I sticking to my don't be so serious and keep things simple? That's another thing that has come
Big
through to me.
simple.
Like, and I feel in a lot of even what you've shared so far, you're sort of disseminating the information that way. And that is so important because I think that not only are we being triggered by various things, but we're like getting confused easily. And then sometimes the information that comes into our space is sort of like curated, right? That could be a whole conversation. And there's all these things
Yeah.
that are just going on like right now in our time where it's like, it feels more complicated than it is. And it's like you said, safety and connection. And I do feel like we're all moving in that direction all the time. And of course, people are having different lived experiences based on where they are in the world and all these other different aspects, right? But like our consciousness or our soul, it feels like is always moving towards more connection and oneness and out of this
Yeah.
space of like sort of
Yeah.
contraction or resistance or separation or scared or all of those sorts of things.
Right.
So that alone feels like such a yeah, no one I mean, I would venture to say no one would argue that safety and connection is something valuable to all of us. And the
Right.
places where we can find those truths, at least now, based on what we're navigating, feel really important.
That's right.
Like you mentioned the administration, it's like, okay, well, yeah, if you're, I don't know, Democrat, Republican, whatever, you're probably still gonna be like, yeah, safety and connection. If we really take different sort of like issues or ideals or ways we feel about things or how we're triggered, like, what does it come down to? Like, yeah, I wanna feel safe and I wanna feel connected to myself, to other people, to the
Yeah.
earth, the world, plants, animals,
Yeah.
the spirit realm. And I don't think in our culture we even know, or at least not all of us, and I can speak for myself and say this was true at some point, that we want to be connected to all of that. Sort of like not quite how we're oriented. And then you realize, like, yeah, it's not all about me, or I don't want to just be, say, connected to the people in my life. I mean, these are good things, right? But also it's like, oh, wait, like this whole experience, the
Yeah.
connection of this whole experience. Then what you're talking about in terms of like tensegrity medicine and going into that space and the energies that are there and what you can tap into, it's like a world of possibility that we
Mhm.
can interface with in a healing way.
Yes.
Like, so that's true too, right? There's all these possibilities, and that could feel like, whoa, it's a lot. But actually, always what we're coming back to is simple.
That's right. It's just yeah. The space, it's really that it can seem like a lot, right? As like the expansion can get so big, like you're describing, like, oh wow, like to all my guide team and to all these different spaces that my particles might be, witnessing. But it's really like, but right there is you're just keeping that coherent field of that with what's in that person, that that very high vibration, and I can feel it manually sometimes when I'm with the energy within the cerebral spinal fluid, right? Like
Yeah.
that energy that's running through that fluid that runs through all the fluid, like you just keep getting in the more in between and in the in between space. Anyway, that if that vibration is just running in the forefront, whatever is coming up, it it's all in safety and it's resonating with, right? And so it's as simple as just like allowing that resonance and integration to come together. And yeah, it's I'm and it's about like a paradigm, like, and that's been my evolution over the last, you know, for all these years is like, I grew up in a born again Christian household, so that was a paradigm. And I trained in Western medicine. I was a speech language pathologist in brain injury rehab. And then 11 years into that, I got into the more nervous system, fascia, light touch body work. And now it's more like it's all energy. And it's always been energy. I just didn't
Yes.
have the framework. So a lot of times it's just like opening up my framework to the multidimensionality, but it's actually as simple as it's all just energy, and energy is information that's just here for us and to witness and integrate and allow the information. Is that kind of making sense to what you were saying? Yeah.
Yes. So it's interesting. Something that's coming through as a question is, so how does this apply if someone has some type of illness?
Mm.
Let's say maybe like autoimmune. And like one of my guides is, I don't know, this is taking us in a different direction, but sort of this concept in terms of moving in the direction of healing.
Mm. I mean, there's, yeah, autoimmune, there's a lot of dynamics there. And what I would do with someone is I would just be present with whatever was up in the moment, right? So if they were having a particular physical sensation that they just wanted to go into the somatic body and be with the physical sensation, or if they were having like an emotional frustration or, whatever state was up, or whether it's a belief system of like, I'm never going to get better. Why is my body
Mm.
fighting itself? So it's like kind of like whatever state is up in that it's in I call it the first line of restriction. Um, then that's what I'm gonna be with. I'm just gonna be present with what is. And then allow that as we're integrating that energy within their system. How does that, because the system knows how to self organize, it knows how to be in homeostasis. And they're saying there's a new word now, homeodynamic, because nothing is static.
Yes.
But that oscillation of just everything kind of in sync to the biggest orchestra, it's like I think of the frequency as like an orchestra that needs to get in harmony. And so it's like whatever is like out of tune in the moment, whether that's like the violin section and like that's in the emotional body or whatever, like I'm going to be right there with it. And their conscious state is going to be right there with it. And then see how then when that integration and resonance comes into coherence, how does that change another part of how the autoimmune is presenting in their system?
Mm.
And I just trust how the body knows how to self-organize. And is that kind of, it's a big
Yes.
topic, autoimmune. There's a lot going on there, and there's not
So
one way to be with it, you know?
So with the a lot going on there aspect, because, there's many things I think this is true for at this time, but that is something that is in the field, where a lot of people are having a variety of issues in this
Yeah.
realm. But what was coming to me is the part where there's a lot going on. It's because, and you can tell me yay or nay sort of about
Yeah.
all of this, but because there are likely patterns in the mind
Yes.
and emotional patterns. And then of course what's expressing in the physical body. And whenever something is in the physical body in that densest layer, it's like sometimes we're like, can I do anything about this? Like there could be sort of a powerlessness that's associated with
Right.
being in that space. But for example, at least with shamanic sessions, I'll say over time, right? Like someone could come in with something where it does express in all of these layers and be at the point in their journey where they're ready to let all that go. And just like in that session and at that point,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with me. It's just like sort of that's where they're at and it all shifts. Um, and it doesn't, wherever anyone is at, it doesn't make it like, right, wrong, etc. But it's helpful, I think, to recognize that there's, let's say dissonance in all of these different layers, and we can be in the moment with whatever is expressing and attend to that. Um, but we also have, I'm going to say, the freedom to release it all.
Mm.
And as I say it out loud, I'm recognizing like we're not always there in the moment to do that. But the reason that information or that knowing, and I think
Yeah.
like we can all tap into that knowing is valuable, is because let's say there is a pattern in the mind that is like, I feel like my body is not on my side or something, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And it's some kind of thought pattern that's circulating. There could be a reason that we're holding on to that, so it's all
Right.
connected, right? There's an emotional component too, and it's always within our capacity to kinda tune in and go, "Okay, I can feel," like, if it can be sort of, like, witnessed or brought to the forefront, you can be, I'm gonna just say, like, honest with yourself, like, sort
Yeah.
of can I let this go, or am I not ready to, or whatever? It's like you always can, but not necessarily if you're not sort of in a line, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, it's just sort of like that doesn't even have to be like a bad thing. I don't know if even that's how it's coming through, but it's just sort of like, okay, if there's recognition of the more holistic aspect of whatever we're going through or navigating, in this case, something that is expressing physically, but it's kind of connected to these other layers, we can just tune into some of
Yes.
these other pieces that are creating the dissonance. Again, without making it complicated. Like, it actually still can be simple, even though it is true that there's a lot going on, meaning there is this dissonant energy in many layers of our being, or maybe sort of like multiple dissonant energies in those layers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like kind of
Yes.
refreshing and hopeful to take it back to the simplicity. Like, it doesn't mean coming from that mind culture that we
Right.
have to analyze every, let's say, piece of the constellation of dissonance in every layer to
No.
then shift the thing. That feels like, oh, how am I ever going to, climb this mountain
Right.
or get to the other side?
Yeah.
But
Right.
we can tune into in our awareness, like, maybe, like, to use what you had said, like, what's stickier or what's heavier? And if we're in an open place, the capacity to shift those things, well, it's all connected. So a lot of these other pieces are just gonna kinda go with it.
Yeah.
Does that feel true?
100%. Like, I love how you're describing it. And, what keeps coming through for me is like in your one of my favorite facts in your reference to like how it could just the potentiality of something to change is how we are 99.9999% space,
Mm,
right? An atom is really just 0.01% matter, and the rest is this and in the space is not nothing. It's like this electron cloud of potentiality, right? And so that's part of that really high vibration coherent field that's like running in the forefront to whatever is in reflection with the dissonance. And so it's like I'm holding that potentiality of, if something is really and I also think alchemizers that actually change a frequency from dissonance to coherence is gratitude. That's why I love this internal family systems model. It's like when you learn about why it was there and how it was protecting you or how it was managing something for you. When you learn about how long it's been in your system doing what it's doing, there's all this like unconditional love and acceptance and gratitude that seems to be the alchemizing kind of like I call it like the safety like a special sauce. It's like a sauce that just resonates over the molecules. And in that, it's like so things aren't always ready to like you can cognitively be ready to let something go, but it's different in the energy and in
yes.
the right, it's different in the embodied way, in the energetic way of letting something go. So sometimes feeling it's, of why it's there and how long it's been there. When you're relating from that space, there's so much unconditional love and benevolence towards it that that's the alchemizing sauce that brings something in. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
the gratitude piece feels so important because it's something that I would say we hear a lot as far as the potential to shift your state and where you're at, like, like be grateful or get, I know this is, a very general sense of it, not exactly what you're
right.
saying, but like get into a state of gratitude.
It's a
But
frequency to marinate in.
yeah,
It's not just saying it or writing down your 5 things in the journal and then, like, checking that off,
well,
but
and also you can't
frequency.
be grateful, right? Like you were saying, exactly. You can't just say it or have it be in that layer. if you don't have some deeper understanding or knowing of the thing,
Yes.
especially if it's something that is, like, shitty. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
that's been
if
very uncomfortable and hard for
yeah.
so long.
These are some of the things, right, that we're kind of wanting to balance, harmonize, let go, whatever the case may be. And when you can get to that space of deeper understanding or knowing, then that gratitude really can come in. And then you can be in the frequency, as you're saying,
Yeah,
versus sometimes I think we just get the first layer, like you're saying, like write 5 things or say
yeah,
a mantra or,
right.
like that's not really getting you into the energy that transforms. But
Yes,
I think that that deeper understanding could, you also can access that in so many ways.
yes,
Like if something is coming up, and sort of in this example, I'm just going to say that like we don't feel grateful about, but to
yes,
be in that energy would bring more alignment and be beneficial. And so it's like, how do I get there? You can get there through a knowing. You could get there through a deep meditation where maybe you
yeah,
have a visual experience of something connected to it or a feeling connected to it. Or you could get there through, sort of talking about it and gaining more clarity. So there's like many pathways to get
yes,
to that energy. Um, and yet again, that kind of brings us to another aspect of like the possibilities and the field, or like you were saying, just like that's literally how we're made up, this like quantum field of possibility, like
right.
that can feel like, I don't know, like complicated or like, where do I start? Or how do I, but like feeling into that as like this good thing where we can harness or like attune to what
Yeah,
takes us to the space that's really just relevant in the moment. That's really powerful. And so I think that that is something, well, interestingly, it's like I say this humbly, but that's something that when you work with a healing practitioner, especially someone who's connected with an energy modality, and I'll even go so far as to say if there is some shamanic piece as well, it doesn't
mhm,
have to be the way, the person is sort of like putting their container out there. But again, that connection with like all aspects of
yes.
um,
Oh,
our
yeah,
experience, the earth and others, and sort of when
yes,
we're going into that, it's like that witnessing and that holding the space and being able to do that oftentimes really is, I'm going to say, the key. I mean, of course we can get to spaces on our own, right? But there's also just this, hey, we don't know what we don't know. And so that
yeah,
mirroring, that witnessing is really valuable. And you can get to these frequencies with practitioners. So this is not the only
yes,
way, but just in this moment, it feels kind of like, I don't know, there's a pinnacle in sharing that because that shines a light on that connection between self and other. And
yeah, we
again,
need
that
each
can
other.
be, yeah, in a backdrop that has all, in the space that the spirit is held and nature comes through, like all these frequencies come
Yes,
through. Um, and so rather than just like, okay, let me ask AI and it says, write 5 things that you're grateful for, or, like
I know.
something when we're like trying to figure it out, it's like there is some
Each other.
beauty in this, yeah,
Yeah,
connection and even in person when it's possible, etc. But
yeah,
that really takes us to the frequency, to the vibration. So I feel like also as I'm saying that, I'm like, you have something potent to share on that. It's like, that special sauce of gratitude, like that gave me a good visual and I can really like
it's like,
feel
yeah, I
that.
have, like, 2 things that are coming up, like,
Yes.
so I have a visual, like, and I often see this, like, because to be have gratitude for something that's so difficult, how do you get there? Go into the difficult.
Mm,
It's like, so it's the visual is like a spiraling, enfolding kind of spiral, like, go down into, if whether it's like, I'm so frustrated with my body, or I'm so tired of it, or angry, like, go down to where you feel that, and then what is then when you're there, it's like this attunement, and you're allowing it, the sauce is also being with it. So this isn't like bringing in a coherent field, it's not spiritual bypassing, right? We're not just like not being with it, but it's just giving it a coherent, resonant to be in witness with it. And so, what is a coherent field? Well, one of my energy medicine teachers, Prune Harris, is she's like, we have one within us. And so you can go into these things in meditation if you've got that kind of in the forefront resonating within you. We have it in each other. That's why we're going to a practitioner that is like, feels like a safe person that can witness in this way and really hold the big space. And the earth is a coherent field and it knows balance, always finding its way back. And so that's why, yeah, just laying on the earth or bringing in our earth elements. And then, of course, what we're connected to, if our guides and the ones in the sentient realms are, of course, there's nothing to balance. They're like, they're there with it. And so you're just bringing that into the spiral, and what I often kind of like see, and then as you're with it, and maybe you're getting to know it, is like it starts to then unfurl. It's like a vortex goes one way, and it can be so hard sometimes to look towards fear and grief and shame and what in my experiences is there are just like these golden nuggets in excavating these like spiraling caverns because you're down there and then you come to that space of really unconditionally loving it. And then it's almost like the spiral then unfurls and the vortex goes this way. And that's part of like the resonance match. So yeah, that's what comes up when I hear you speak of like, how do we do this? You can do
Yes.
it with yourself in meditation but that's hard sometimes. If I'm dysregulated and I try to witness the collective grief, you know, that sometimes just equals more dysregulation, right? So it's like, how can I
Mm.
find that deep space within me and just see that distortion field of collective grief and power over dynamics it's always been there and kind of always will be, but it's not in my field, and that's the claiming of the coherent radiant resonance of me filling up my field. And I can be in relation to it, but it's not in and I am not of. Does that make sense too, as it relates to the
It
bigger?
feels like this requires a trust.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
one thing that was coming up is, like you were
Self-trust.
saying, if you're going down into the spiral of something where there is a fear element, and then what came to me was like, trauma and certain places where it's like, people are not wanting to go maybe because they don't trust their body and they've tried to go there before, or the memories of a thing, or, whatever is coming up. And then it's like, yes, you can take the frequency of the earth into it and
Mm,
diffuse sort of like the fear, and then that's going to diffuse maybe if there was an experience prior that was like scary or loud or something, it's going to shift it just like
yes.
that spiraling the other direction. But that might not be the thing. It's like maybe you trust yourself, or like you feel like you only trust yourself, or and that could be the place to, okay,
Yes.
then yeah, maybe
Yes.
you are starting doing it on your own or in a meditation, and then there's going to be cases where I feel like I don't trust myself, or I don't trust my body on this, or, and then perhaps there is a practitioner or someone who can hold the space for you. So it feels like we can always get to some space of trust if
Yes.
we sit with that and kind of go, okay, where is it? How do I connect to it and be real with ourselves? Like, okay, this is where it's not.
Yeah.
And that's why whatever it is like, there's the sort of symptoms isn't the perfect way to say it, but like whatever's coming up, the fear, et cetera, related to the thing. And so we can kind of go, okay, where can I connect with the trust? And that
Yes.
can sometimes be a starting point to get to the space.
100%. I think so much of my work is like reestablishing self-trust,
Yes.
Like, so I think right now the example of like clients that have that hypermobility spectrum and, go into EDS, it's like they are highly empathic, highly sensitive beings. And how the body has like tensioned and postured in order to protect that highly sensitive spirit. But then it's almost like it's done it so much it like, almost chokes out, and because there's been that, oh, wait, but I know, but their symptoms are so multisystemic that nothing fits in the category. And so they're always gaslit by the medical community or
Mm.
maybe gaslit by, by caregivers. And it's like that it's reestablishing that self-trust and them not gaslighting themselves. They kn that they I know, you know, uh, and that in relation to the dissonant or the physical symptom, and that's what came to mind when I think about reestablishing self-trust is paramount with exactly what you said. And where can I trust, you know? My feet on the ground when I was in that certain part of the planet of when I felt so connected or whatever it was, whatever memory or felt sense you can marinate yourself in, any experience you've ever had with being, those are the spaces that is like, no, you're connected. You have that. Yeah.
Do you have like, a word that you like to use for our essence or core consciousness or
Mm.
soul or sort of this, whatever is us when we get some of these other things
I love the
balanced?
word essence. I love the word wholeness. Um,
So this was coming up also as we're just sharing, and part of me is like, this could be a whole podcast, but for women and sort of like the cycles we go through in life, and
yeah.
like there's this whole really pretty huge slash long arc of like perimenopause and
Yeah.
menopause and there's a lot of physical symptoms that can come up, and just a wide spectrum. And so interestingly to me, sort of like it feels like a really good example of what we've been discussing and touching on in a way, maybe because it also follows the arc of our experience, and it's something that can express physically. Um, but to me, I feel like, for example, when we get to a place where it's like, okay, hormones are imbalanced and
Yeah.
now this or that is going on, it's also like we're gaining wisdom throughout
Yes.
our life, and that also tends to go hand in hand with gaining sensitivity and,
Yes.
intuition and having an expansion of all of these things. And so, an aspect of what is coming up and expressing in terms of maybe finding the gratitude for, like, I could give a personal example, like getting a migraine when you get your period or something. You know, it's like,
My body wants me to shut down. Okay.
yes, it's like our actions lined up with what we know. So, it was
Yeah.
in a different earlier decade, what we knew was different, but we can still have old patterns, or there could just be a
Yes.
reason in the moment or in the time that our actions are not totally lined up or in harmony with what we know when it comes to our own well being. And sort of like the tools and resources and knowing that we have to balance that. So,
Yeah.
the embodiment, the sort of
Yes.
taking that action will bring us into balance, but oftentimes these sort of myriad symptoms, and by no means am I saying this in like it's an easy landscape. I think it's another thing that we can bring back to it is simple, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of sort of possibilities of how these imbalances can show up. And it's like, this is really just showing me
Yeah.
where I'm out of balance, but it's like I already have the, I'm gonna say, information or the knowing of how to move in the direction of balance. So,
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Right. Like as uncomfortable as the symptom is,
yes.
what if it was here for you? Like, there's this one acronym, PAIN, pay attention inward now. Like,
Mm.
what if it was a sensation with information and it was here for you?
I think
You
yeah.
you have that time to listen and pay attention inward,
Oh my gosh.
and the more then you're, like, listening and paying attention inward, the more self-trust is developed, and then maybe that symptom, isn't gonna scream so loudly
Yes.
because you're paying attention to it, right? And, yeah, so often it's like it this the spirit, like, uses the physical to get our attention
Mhm.
and to like, it wants to expand. It wants to be in a new expression. Now that you're in this stage and the kids are out of the house and you don't have to be like that, and it's like it wants you to kind of like I think of sometimes, like the shedding of the skin, right? It wants you to slough off old ways. And so it's bringing you into more embodiment so that then the soul and the spirit can express itself fully.
Yes. This is something, even using the migraine as an example, I can speak to and say, right, there's this physical component of, oh, okay, there's like a certain hormone that is what low, and
Yeah.
there's certain things that are like
Yeah.
creating, okay, now I have this migraine.
Yeah.
But there's also this, "Oh my gosh, here I am in the cycle again, and I didn't even realize I was here." And thinking more sort of shamanically, or even just going back in history with, like, women's cycles and getting your period and whatever, it's like, you've got the example of the red tents, or so many
Right.
cultures where it's like, yeah, you're gonna go and you're gonna rest.
Right.
Even beyond the point of having a period, it's like still you're honoring this whole,
That's
like,
right.
moon cycle, and you get to that point and it's like, okay, you're not responsible for whatever you're sort of doing at other times. Somebody else is gonna help with that or take that off your plate. And not only are you gonna rest, but you're gonna go inward, you're gonna go into an
Yeah.
intuitive space. Your intuitive capacity is, like, greater at this time.
That's right.
And so if you actually do that and build it in, there is a component of that resting, right? This isn't necessarily fit so well culturally, but if we can,
Right.
kind of like put our what am I holding here? It's like some kind of wand, It's like we can kind of like put that down in the earth and command that we will have
I'm
some,
resting.
yes, like some period of
Honor it.
honor it, rest, that also has an impact on our physiology and what's going on in a
That's right,
hormonal
because
way.
you've chosen. You've chosen to love yourself more in that moment
Yes.
and not gaslight yourself and just be like, "Okay, I'm gonna take this and then I'm gonna just try to do my day." You've chosen. And that again, that is a frequency of like you're trusting, you're listening, you're honoring, and that frequency changes molecules.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love it as an example because, well, I guess I just know so many women these days that are, maybe navigating this and different symptoms come up, et cetera. But there's just you can address the symptoms, but usually it's just turning the dial down a little bit. And then there's like so many and something else pops up. And of course, we could apply this to other
yeah,
conditions, things that manifest. But, uh, or we're listening and we're tuning in and, we're creating these shifts and it's getting more to the root of, like you said, spirit
yes,
is using the body to get our attention to really shift things.
yeah, I
So,
love that. Right. Like still when you're choosing medication or I'm choosing that supplement,
yes.
you know, that is choosing to love yourself more by taking care of yourself and
Mhm.
doing the thing that's going to bring you into regulation. Like, yeah, so there's lots it's like it's always to me it's like the intention behind it. Am
Yes.
I taking this medication and supplement because I want to get rid of something and I'm so like in resistance to it,
Mm.
or am I taking this medication or supplement because I'm choosing to love myself more and bring, and then just
Yes.
swallowing the stuff with that frequency is
Yes.
a huge difference. It's the intention behind the action that can be giving the frequency that it makes it that much more potent in your body for
Mm.
bringing you into this balanced place.
So we really are very empowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is really where I'm landing with this. I mean, we just have a couple more minutes, so if there's anything, you wanna share to wrap up, but that's how it's coming to me. It's like this
Yeah.
there can be this focus on possibility and possibilities and this recognition that we can sort of embody this place of empowerment, and that can look a lot of different ways. Support is a big part of it. Um,
Yeah.
but I think going back to that safety and connection too, it's like that that's really what we're going for.
Yeah. Right. Find it in each other. And even if someone's going about that in a totally different way than you would go about it, underneath it all, we're actually more alike than we are different. We're
Yes.
all that's the core of things. And so I think if we can just look at each other with that, like, oh yeah, he's doing that for safety and connection. I'm doing this for safety. You're like, oh yeah, you know? It's just then you start to break away those interferences. Yeah, but thank you so much, Pavan. This was lovely.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me, Liz. Do you want to share your website or any other pertinent information?
Sure. Yeah, Tensegrity Medicine Charleston.com. And I can, yeah, it's
Okay,
a,
excellent.
yeah.
So we'll have that linked below. And I don't always remember to say this, but certainly if you tune in and you want to like on YouTube or on Spotify, that's where this will show up, both
Okay.
locations. And then, so this is our first podcast of 2026, which feels exciting because I feel like we just went into such a expanded, juicy, positive place. So more of that will be on the docket. And then I'll be doing 2 recordings each month, and 1 each month will be me solo, and I'm just going to start sort of channeling some information from the collective in that way as well. So I'm excited to offer that as kind of like a new approach, a new addition. And thank you to everyone who is listening and tuning in. And I look forward to our next connection.
Thank you so much. So fun.
Yeah, see you soon.